ABC General Hospital spoilers for Friday, February 27 reveal that Liesl has never been a woman who waits passively for justice. She has survived exile, disgrace, and humiliation with the same iron spine that once made her feared in laboratories and courtrooms alike. But this time, the battle is not about reputation or power. It is about Nathan. It is about a son whose legacy she believes has been quietly diminished, whose name has been invoked with sympathy but not defended with force, and Liesl cannot accept that. Not anymore. For weeks, she has been reviewing documents, statements, and procedural gaps surrounding decisions that affected Nathan's estate and the recognition of his service. At first, she told herself that the oversights were bureaucratic, unfortunate, but impersonal. Yet the deeper she dug, the more she sensed something deliberate, an institutional indifference that bordered on erasure. Benefits delayed, citations quietly reduced in language, a memorial acknowledgement that felt sanitized, stripped of the complexity and courage that defined him. To Liesl, this was not clerical negligence, it was an injustice. And injustice is something she does not forgive. It is in this storm of controlled fury that she begins to think of Britt. Not simply as her daughter, but as an ally uniquely positioned to help. Britt understands systems, medical, administrative, political. She knows how to read between the lines of official language and identify the vulnerabilities hidden within it. Liesl realizes that reclaiming Nathan's rightful recognition will require more than anger. It will require strategy. And strategy is something Britt has always excelled at, even when the world underestimated her. The idea forms slowly but firmly. Britt could help her reopen the case surrounding Nathan's benefits, challenge the revisions made to official reports, and pressure those who chose convenience over accuracy. Liesl does not frame this as revenge. She frames it as restoration, a correction, a necessary adjustment to a narrative that has drifted too far from truth. When she finally allows herself to admit it, the plan excites her, not because it promises confrontation, but because it promises leverage. She has uncovered a new angle documentation suggesting that a procedural error during the original review process may have unfairly limited compensation owed to Nathan's beneficiaries. If proven, it could force the department to re-examine everything. It could mean financial restitution, yes, but more importantly, it could mean formal acknowledgement of Nathan's full sacrifice. For Liesl, this is not about money. It is about dignity. Yet she knows the path will not be simple. Reopening such matters will provoke resistance. There are officials who would prefer the past remain untouched. There are colleagues who believe revisiting old wounds only destabilizes fragile peace. But Liesl has never believed in peace built on omission, and so she considers the necessary adjustments. She must gather allies carefully. She must present evidence strategically. She must ensure that the push for Nathan's rights does not appear emotional, but factual and irrefutable. That is where Britt becomes essential. Britt's involvement would shift perception. It would transform the fight from a grieving mother's crusade into a calculated legal challenge. Together, they could approach the matter from dual angles: medical documentation supporting the extent of Nathan's service-related strain, and administrative inconsistencies that undermine the official conclusions. Liesl feels a surge of determination as she imagines the two of them standing not in opposition to the system, but in command of it. This is the new adjustment forming beneath the surface of Port Charles. A recalibration of power. Liesl is no longer reacting to loss. She is engineering accountability. There is something almost haunting in her resolve. Grief has sharpened her rather than weakened her. Every memory of Nathan fuels a steadier hand. She refuses to let his name fade into polite remembrance when it deserves institutional respect. And as she prepares to reach out to Britt, there is an unspoken understanding that this endeavor will change them both. It will demand emotional resilience and strategic ruthlessness. But Liesl is prepared, because reclaiming Nathan's rights is not just an administrative correction. It is a declaration that his life mattered in full measure. And if Britt joins her, their combined force could create a shift no one saw coming, a new alignment of influence that forces Port Charles to confront what it tried to quietly move past. For Liesl, that confrontation is not optional. It is overdue. Laura is not being entirely honest, and Alexis can feel it long before she can prove it. There is a hesitation in Laura's tone, a careful selection of words that feels rehearsed rather than spontaneous. For someone who has built her reputation on transparency and moral clarity, Laura's restraint is unsettling. Alexis has known her long enough to recognize when something is being withheld, and lately, every conversation carries that undercurrent of concealment. What Alexis does not yet know is that the pressure Laura is under is not political gossip or routine administrative stress. It is Sidwell. Sidwell has not confronted Laura publicly. He has not threatened her in a way that could be documented or exposed. Instead, he has applied pressure with surgical precision, strategic reminders of funding channels, quiet references to vulnerabilities in municipal oversight, subtle implications that certain investigations could be reconsidered if cooperation is not maintained. It is not blackmail in the traditional sense, but it is coercion-controlled, methodical, and designed to isolate. Laura understands exactly what he is doing. He is forcing an adjustment in her leadership, nudging her decisions in directions that benefit him while maintaining plausible deniability. And Laura, for the first time in years, feels cornered. She cannot tell Alexis the full extent of it, because doing so would expose how precarious her position has become. Sidwell has made it clear that any overt resistance could trigger consequences not just for her office, but for people she cares about. Contracts could vanish. Legal reviews could surface. Allegations could be manufactured. The threat is not loud, it is suffocating. So, Laura adjusts. She delays certain initiatives. She redirects scrutiny away from specific financial pathways. She frames compromises as strategic patience. Alexis watches these changes with growing unease. Then, she sees the pattern. These are not random obstacles, they are adjustments, and they are aligning in ways that limit her maneuverability. Alexis begins to feel controlled. For a woman who has spent her life navigating power structures, the realization is infuriating. She senses an invisible hand guiding outcomes, narrowing her options. And when she confronts Laura, she does not receive denial, she receives deflection. That is what shakes her. Laura does not argue. She redirects. She reframes. She insists that timing is complicated, that caution is necessary. But caution has never been Laura's defining trait in matters of justice. The emotional tension escalates when Alexis uncovers a meeting record showing Sidwell had private access to Laura weeks before several policy shifts occurred. The timeline is too precise to dismiss. Suddenly, the pieces align in a way that makes Alexis's stomach drop. Laura is not merely adjusting her leadership style. She is being pressured, and worse, that pressure is influencing decisions that are indirectly suppressing Alexis's own efforts. The new shock detonates not with shouting, but with clarity. Alexis understands that she has been maneuvered without consent. Laura, whether intentionally or not, has become a conduit for Sidwell's influence. And that realization feels like betrayal, even if it was born from fear rather than disloyalty. The haunting shift is not just political. It is personal. Alexis must now question whether Laura's silence is protection or complicity. Laura, meanwhile, is unraveling internally. She never intended for Alexis to feel constrained. Every adjustment she made was calculated to buy time to prevent Sidwell from escalating, but she underestimated how those quiet concessions would ripple outward. She thought she could manage the pressure alone. She thought shielding Alexis from the full truth would spare her. Instead, it has created fracture. When Alexis finally confronts her with the meeting record, the air between them thickens with unspoken truths. Laura realizes the secret cannot remain contained much longer. Sidwell's leverage is tightening, and the illusion of stability is crumbling. The adjustment she believed would stabilize the situation has instead destabilized trust. The shock now was twofold. Alexis feels suppressed by forces she did not see, and Laura must face the reality that her silence empowered the very manipulation she sought to contain. And Sidwell, somewhere in the background, understands exactly what he has achieved. He has not only pressured a mayor, he has disrupted an alliance. What comes next will not be quiet, because once Alexis recognizes the full extent of the coercion, she will not accept being maneuvered again. And Laura will be forced to choose continue absorbing the pressure alone, or expose Sidwell's tactics and risk the fallout she has been trying so desperately to prevent. The adjustment is no longer subtle. It is explosive. Willow raised her hand and delivered the oath with flawless composure, her voice calm, steady, unshaken. In that single moment, she stopped being a rising political figure and officially became senator. The applause was thunderous, cameras flashing as allies smiled and celebrated her victory. On the surface, it was a triumph of perseverance and ambition. But beneath the ceremony, something far more unsettling took hold. The oath did not just elevate Willow's status, it changed the power dynamic around her, and the people closest to her felt it immediately. There was a shift in her presence the second it became official. Willow did not look overwhelmed or humbled. She looked certain that she belonged there, certain that the authority now resting in her hands was earned and justified. That certainty was what unsettled Michael most. He had supported her, defended her, believed in her vision. But as he watched her move through the crowd, shaking hands with practiced grace, he sensed a new distance. Her smile was warmer for cameras than for him, her attention sharper, more strategic. It wasn't that she had changed overnight, it was that the oath had crystallized something already forming within her. Dante felt the danger in more practical terms. A senator is not just a title. It is access, influence, leverage. Investigations that once operated independently could now intersect with federal oversight. Information channels widened. Political protection thickened. If there were unresolved questions about Willow's past, her new position complicated everything. The timing alone was enough to unsettle him. Just as suspicions had begun tightening around certain inconsistencies, Willow stepped into a role that insulated her from easy scrutiny. Elizabeth noticed the emotional change. Willow's tone in private conversations grew firmer, less vulnerable. Where there had once been hesitation, there was now decisiveness. Where she once sought reassurance, she now issued direction. It wasn't arrogance, it was control. But control, when paired with power, can become intimidating. Liz felt that intimidation quietly. Because the more confident Willow became, the harder it was to question her without appearing disloyal. The fear surrounding Willow's ascension was not dramatic. No one confronted her, no one openly doubted her integrity. Instead, the fear lived in pauses, in glances exchanged after meetings, in conversations that grew more careful. People chose their words differently around her now. They measured reactions, they weighed risks, because power changes perception. Michael began to see how quickly personal loyalty was reframed as political calculation. Decisions once driven by emotion were now filtered through optics. Public image mattered. Strategic alliances mattered more. It wasn't that Willow stopped caring, it was that caring became secondary to positioning. Dante understood something else that made his pulse tighten. If Willow had made mistakes in the past, if there were secrets still buried, her new role gave her both foresight and influence. She would not be blindsided again. She would anticipate threats, neutralize them quietly. The oath was not just ceremonial, it was protective armor. And perhaps that was what frightened everyone most. Willow did not appear intoxicated by power, she appeared prepared for it, as if this moment had always been part of a larger trajectory. She answered policy questions with precision. She deflected criticism smoothly. She reframed difficult topics without visible strain. It was impressive and unnerving. Because when someone adapts that seamlessly to authority, it suggests they were ready long before the title arrived. Elizabeth felt the emotional weight of that readiness. She remembered moments when Willow seemed fragile, uncertain. Now those memories felt distant, almost naive. The vulnerability had receded. In its place stood resolve. As the ceremony concluded and the crowd dispersed, the applause faded but the tension did not. Those closest to Willow could not ignore the transformation. The oath had not changed who she was. It had amplified her. And amplification is dangerous when doubt already exists. Willow had sworn to uphold justice, to protect the vulnerable, to serve with integrity. Her words were impeccable. Yet beneath the celebration, one silent question lingered in the minds of those watching her rise. If protecting her position ever conflicts with protecting the truth, which will she choose? The oath marked a beginning. For everyone around her, it also marked the beginning of fear.